Hi, my name's Steve and I love people who make things. On the factory next door, we don't just meet the makers, we go through their factory gates. Hello Lynn, how are you?
Hello Steve.
And what an extraordinary workshop. Each episode focuses on one beautifully made piece and the person behind it.
My poor son, he jokes about it now. You used to make me sleep in a suitcase.
We never argue. I'm sure we have a bit of a... Yeah, we have tense moments.
Join me, let's go travelling. Welcome to the factory next door and to Covent Garden in central London. For those of you who know this place, I'm actually just sat on the cobbled stones just outside the London Transport Museum. I'm here actually picking up a gift because this week we are celebrating the British-made museum gift. Now that's probably not something you instantly think of when you think of British-made goods, but trust me, the makers we're off to meet for this episode collaborate with some of the world's most famous art galleries and museums to create stunning fabrics, works of art in themselves. Think scarves, bags, cushions, and they've actually just done a project with the Transport Museum celebrating 160 years of the London Underground. More of that in a little bit, but whilst I head across town to meet the makers, have a listen to what's coming up in the show.
We like the challenge of odd colours that on their own you might think, oh, that's not a very attractive colour.
20 odd years ago, manufacturing was a dirty word. Everybody was offshoring.
When the exhibition's on and you designed it months ago and you go to the private view, then you do sort of think, gosh, that's quite amazing.
We weren't friends. We were in very different friendship groups back then.
Yes.
You are now though, right?
What? Yes.
Apart from the camping.
Apart from the camping.
Welcome to Clerkenwell. This corner of London, very well known for its design studios. It actually hosts a design festival here every year, which is hugely popular. I'm actually sat at a crossroads. Diagonally opposite me, I've got a old dairy shop actually, which looks like it's been turned into a very nice antique furniture shop. Across from that, we've got a wallpaper shop, which looks very, very expensive, but very, very nice hand-printed wallpapers. I'm at a deli, which I can tell you is very nice. And just across the road, the fourth and final corner shop is a white building, and in the window it proudly says, "We love colour." And that is the design studio of Wallace Sewell.
Hello, I'm Emma Sewell. I'm half of Wallace Sewell.
And I'm Harriet Wallace-Jones and I'm the other half. So I'm the Wallace and Emma is the Sewell.
Excellent, it's in the name.
It's in the name.
Ring. So you're obviously renowned for beautiful, colourful designs that you get woven, and you've done a number of commissions with art galleries, working on some amazing kind of exhibitions. When I look at some of the artists you've had to take inspiration from and create beautiful designs from their work, Degas, Hepworth, Lowry, Matisse, Turner, I want to get straight in here. Do you ever find that slightly intimidating?
I think there was one where it felt quite a challenge. So, often we're working from paintings. So there's obviously visual, colour, there's composition. We can take that sort of abstract that composition and the colours and the textures and make them into a piece of fabric. When the take came to us and said, okay, it's the Barbara Hepworth, loved her work, but it's sculpture. And it's very different, but it was a really exciting project in that we moved away from a sort of lamb's wool scarf that we often use as a base for this type of project and designed a new cloth for them. And it kind of went back to the sort of roots of sort of what I was very passionate about when I was studying at college, in that it was an organza fabric, so it's transparent, it was 2 layers, it was about this idea of transparency and solidity and seeing through the fabric, and just then very delicate lines to represent the sort of taut wires in her work. And it was actually a real joy to do. But when they first said we were Okay.
When the exhibition's on and you designed it months ago and you go to the private view, then you do sort of think, gosh, that's quite amazing, without being too conceited. You think, this is an iconic painter, designer, and we've designed the scarf to go into the shop. So that's the moment, I think, when you realise the sort of gravity that this is something really quite special.
Give me a bit of a history of Wallace Sewell.
So we actually met on our first degree, which is at Central School of Art, now Central St Martin's, and we were both studying textiles. And there, to start with, you would study printed textiles, knitted textiles, and woven textiles. And we both chose to specialise in woven textiles. We weren't friends. We always say we weren't friends. We were in very different friendship groups back then.
Yes. You are now, though, right?
What? Yes.
Apart from the camping.
Apart from the camping.
And then we, and actually that was brilliant. There was some particular tutors we had there. I love the work structure.
So in these lectures, Emma would be at the front. She was at the front, hand up. Yes. And then I was at the back, probably having a fag. I can't remember it all. But I think probably I was much more. You were very structural, very academic about your approach to the structure of weaving, which was, and you took it all in. I was much more working on the loom, directly designing, playing around with colour, composition,
painting on the
loom. As time's gone on, we are not frightened of colour, whether it can be unbelievably sort of bright, garish colours, or it can be muted, it can be more subtle colours. All colour works. It's just how you get it to work. And my tutors on foundation were painters, and it was all about, everything was about proportion. And then saturation and how colours play against each other. And you and I now can make any palette. Someone can give us anything, which I hope it doesn't sound too sort of, we could do it. But then we can just look at colour.
We like the challenge of odd colours that on their own you might think, that's not a very attractive colour, or that's quite a difficult colour. And it's just all about balancing. And, in my head, when we're putting together a group of colours, I see it as a sort of balancing sort of process almost of, as you say, the saturation, the brightness, the tone. Is it light? Is it dark? Is it from the warm side of the wheel or the cool side? And it's almost, again, a bit like music.
Yes, totally.
I think it's like balance, when you're creating a piece of music, it's all about balance and
rhythm.
Is it loud? Is it quiet?
Light and dark. Is there a colour that you keep finding yourself being drawn to bring in? Maybe it's like in when you're creating music, maybe it's like the drums. It's something that can just be used to...
We do laugh. So now there's 4 of us who design. In the team, we all have our little pet. When we're putting the collection, it's like, Ingrid's got to have that in there, or
I know, she'll put blue with that.
and it's sort of like little pet. And then the 4 of us will sort of say no or yes. And what we would find is that we'd be literally just playing around with a collection of colours, and then we would say, that's an amazing colour. We need to have it in there, but it wouldn't sell. But we just needed that colour in there to make the collection work. So it's a little bit, I suppose it's a little bit with like all sorts of things. I'm sure that within fashion, whatever, when you've got a collection of garments, there might be one colourway that never works, but it works within the group.
And so, it sort of offsets everything else and brings everything else to life. So,
yes.
Each year we design a new scarf collection that's up to about 50 pieces. We might still do one that's a bit bright, bit odd, but it keeps it looking Wallace Sewell in some ways, and it will sort of draw people over to look at that, and then they might go, actually, I'll choose that.
Obviously we are restricted by the colours that come in the shade cards, because we very rarely dye our own colours, because when we first left college we did all of that, because that's what we did at college. We learned how to dye, and we were always we were encouraged to dye our own colours. But then obviously when we get to the stage that we are now, and the size of our production, you want to be taking stock colours which come off a shade card. So, and it's expensive if you use all, 150 of those shades. So we have to keep it as much as possible just for the logistics of how we work to a certain amount of colours. So we do find sometimes that you're working around the same little group of colours. And sometimes it's like, can't we just bring in, we argue with each other about, can we bring in some new colours? But it's expensive to do it. So that's a practical restriction. And going back to the restrictions, that we have to stick within the colours that the shade cards come in.
Or there's somewhere we do dye colours. But
yes.
Again, there's a few sort of groups of yarns that we use that we do still dye, but then that is a massive investment to sort of suddenly bring another one, because you kind of need to use up something else so that the mill isn't holding on to the yarn for you.
Can I ask about arguments between the two of you?
We never argue. I mean, I have to say, we have. I'm sure we have a bit of a.
Yeah, we have tense moments every now and then.
But we never argue, and I'm sure that's to do with the fact that. So we started the business very much like that, side by side. It wasn't one starter. We're very, very, very different character-wise, But
initially, yes, we weren't a partnership. We weren't a limited company. We were two sole traders trading under our name and doing our own thing, but working alongside. And, in the early days, it worked so well. As Harriet says, our styles of designing was very different, very much sort of connected through our use of colour and our love of colour. But then, Harriet would be designing. We'd sit in our studio and designing our own little collection and going, what do you think about that? I don't like it. I'm going to do it anyway. Whereas now it has to be that we do have to get the full agreement of the team.
And I'm sure, we would both agree that we drive each other mad at times. I'm sure we do. But what we have got, again, without being too conceited, we've got a fantastic relationship that we managed to sort of, we've worked out how our business works. And yes, there are areas that things grow in different directions, and then one of us might have an idea about something, but we communicate very well. And the fact is that the two of us have kept each other sort of, focused on areas, and we've had very, very lean times where it'd be like, we need to get some more work, and you and I will then brainstorm and go out and get work. So it's actually more recently that now, there are parts of the business that you and I actually don't know how that works, because we don't have to do it anymore. Oh, no.
Don't tell anyone that.
No, but on the more logistic, on the more day-to-day, we would do everything. And it was quite interesting recently. We brought the team down from the mill and we all went through our job spec, as it were, and I gave a little talk on how Emma and I started. And I would hope that they were slightly sort of, oh my goodness, we did everything, from the cutting, the labelling, the packaging. We were up till midnight because there was nobody else. So it's almost, reiterating that the whole plethora of what our company does, we did everything. And now we can delegate.
Yes.
Let's hear from the mill, actually. So is it much of your fabric or all of your fabric which is woven?
It's pretty much all of our fabric. We do the occasional project with another mill if we need to weave jacquard for something.
Because Lance can't do jacquard.
But our core collection, all of it, from heavy chenille, chunky lamb's wool, fine organza, all of it is woven there.
So most of your fabric is woven by mill, which is 185 miles up north.
Have you worked that out? That's very...
I quickly Googled that, I'm not going to lie, as I came in. And a few days ago, I popped up to meet Lance. Have a listen to this. So I come to the very edge of the Yorkshire-Lancashire border, driven down quite a narrow, windy country road for a while, and now I'm stood next to a bubbling stream. You can probably hear it in the background, and next to that stream is a stunning old stone mill, painted grey on the outside, and the factory door is a lovely, vibrant green. Let's head in.
My name's Lance Mitchell. I'm a director at Mitchell Interflex, a family-owned, fourth generation weaving company. Well, we're in County Brook Mill, which sits on the old border between Lancashire and Yorkshire. So the stream that fed the water wheel was the county boundary. I can't remember when they moved it. In the 70s, they moved the county boundary. Although if you go into the local town, if you go into Barnoldswick, they still believe they're Yorkshiremen. Built as a mill, we're told, although there's no evidence for it particularly, that it was about 1786. We, as a family, came here. My great-grandfather came here in 1905.
The fact that you're fourth generation, do you find that added responsibility, or do you take comfort from the history?
It's a combination of both. You take comfort from the history, but it does feel like a bit more added responsibility that you don't want to be the generation that kind of blows it all. Here we're lucky as well that we've had a fantastic workforce. You know, we've people that have worked here multi-generations as well. And you know, there's a little board outside that says how many gold watches have been given out at 25 years, and you know, people that have worked here 40 years or 50 years.
I'd love to see that board.
I'll show you it on the way. Oh, you're recording as well?
Yeah, I am.
Well, that's a bit sneaky. Didn't tell me that.
So we've got a picture up on the wall here, Long Service Awards. Top of the list there, we've got 50 years service. Alfred Howarth. Does Alfred still work here?
He retired, then was so bored sitting at home. He asked if he could come back to do a bit of work, and came back, and he just continued doing bits of work, did Alf, but he died in one of the workshops. He was standing leaning on the brush that he was supposed to be sweeping up with when he keeled over, did Alf. So he was part of the fixtures and fittings.
What am I looking at here?
That's a Wallace Sewell lamb's wool throw.
It's a beautiful mix of colours.
That's Wallace Sewell's trademark. They use a lot of colour. There's another machine over there that's set up with a lot of colour in for Wallace Sewell.
How many machines am I looking at here?
In here, about 20 machines in here.
There seems a whole range of ages. Some look quite new, and some of them, like the ones here, I mean, it's a beautiful kind of sage green colour. These look like they might be a little bit older. What kind of age range of the machines have we got here?
We're ranging from, the oldest is probably about 20 years, the newest is a year. So there's got to be a constant programme of replacing machinery and updating your machinery.
How much would a machine like that cost then?
Oh, the latest one, you're looking at about anywhere between 100,000, 150,000. Textiles is capital intensive. Every piece of equipment is an expensive piece of kit. So I sometimes think as an industry, we don't shout loud enough sometimes as to the variety of product and the other industries that rely upon textiles. I'm sure if you say to anybody, textiles, it's curtains, it's clothing, and it doesn't really go beyond there. I use the examples of, you know, when they close the roof at Wimbledon, nobody looks up and goes, oh look, that's a textile product, but it is a woven textile product. Recently, you know, the Mars lander, they've just put a craft on the surface of Mars. That parachute that opened was woven in the UK. It was woven in the UK for NASA. Whenever you hear the words in engineering composites, the basis of a composite, nearly always a textile product.
Have we neglected manufacturing in this country?
Yes. Yeah. Manufacturing, 20 odd years ago, manufacturing was a dirty word. Everybody was offshoring. It was the thing to do. You could buy it cheaper and you could import it cheaper, and transport was cheap. There's this awful phrase that they call reshoring. You know, we're bringing it back. Those of us that are still here never went anywhere.
Are you proud to be a maker in Britain?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And I think if you talk to anybody that's making something, there'll be a little bit of pride there that you're still making things.
Lan, thanks so much for talking to me.
Pleasure.
Oh,
questions.
Good
yeah.
questions. Yeah. What was the one that we really both? Oh yes, the pressure of being a fourth generation, because you've got a lot to live up to.
We met Lance through adversity. So we had been weaving at another mill in Todmorden in 2000, and there were the floods of Todmorden, and the mill we were weaving at, which little sort of one-man band with sort of one guy helping, wasn't insured. The kit got flooded, the looms went down, the electricity went down, couldn't get it back up. So we had our, very small at the time, but production wrapped around beams for the looms got wet, and we had like a week to sort of try and work out what we did. And we went on a road trip, and we'd quite often used to do these road trips to meet new mills and introduce ourselves. And we basically went round, I think, Yorkshire, Lancashire and the borders, going to mills going, "Hi, we're Wallace Sewell. We make really complicated fabric on fairly small scale.
Would you take
us on?" Mostly.
No.
But Lance, to give him his due, he's, at the time he's saying, "Well, I was looking to diversify our business." That whole thing of, he was saying he could buy fabric that they were sort of making an equivalent of cheaper, imported from outside of the UK on the Manchester market, selling retail, than he could make it. And it's like, well, he needs to do something else. We turned up on his doorstep and we was teasing about this, and he was like, "Yeah, I could do that." And he did have the right looms, he had the right capability, and he was very sort of up for a challenge. Little did he know how much of a challenge it was to start with.
He did. He came and rescued. Literally
and he basically
came and rescued us.
drove over in the white van, picked up the beams, got them dried off. We were saying he came over the hill like a
hero,
knight in shining armour, and got them dried, got them wound so they were suitable for his looms, and then started off weaving.
In those uncomfortable days, were you ever tempted to go offshore?
No. And actually, interestingly enough, it's something we've never even considered, not because of mainly because of the fact that when we work with commission weavers, we're still very much in control. So everything that we do until the last minute, we have given them all the information, and therefore they literally just sort of, a little bit more than this, but they virtually just press the button and weave. And it's never ever been even an issue. I mean, I think when we first started, we didn't sit down and say, right, this is our manifesto and ticked all these boxes. It just was the way that we developed and we worked. And we wanted also, maybe subconsciously, we did also want to be very much involved. So we are still so involved in what happens at the mill, and we go up there, and now we obviously have an extended team, but it was never even a consideration.
Can I ask you about perfection? So in this show, I've got the huge pleasure of going and meeting people who are chasing perfection on a particular item, creating the very best particular item. They're learning the skills over years to create, whether it's the perfect custom motorcycle or the perfect bag. Is pursuing perfection fun or frustrating?
Are we pursuing perfection?
I think in a way, I guess we are in design, in that we're always pushing ourselves to create something new. In a way, with the business and our product line, we get a bit bored and we sort of think, we want to create something completely new and give ourselves a new challenge and work within the parameters that we might set ourselves to, how can we design something? So it's, I guess, we're still very much designers and creators. It's not just stepping back and it's about having a business.
Yeah.
It's all of us, but, certainly you and I still, we've just launched an upholstery range, and it's like it had been burning in the back of our brains for quite a while as an idea, and it's like, look, let's just do it. And sometimes these things don't survive, sometimes they do then go on and build into a major part of the collection. So I think I would say perfection is almost as woven designers. We're still finding new things to do as designers within the realm of weaving.
And we are, we're quite good now at having economical design discussions, because that's how we have to be. There has to be a finite point where you have to say yes, good to go. But I would say that we spend quite a lot of time going, little bit, no, that's proportion, talking about the proportions,
Yes.
that needs to go there.
Yeah.
And we can spend a lot of time getting that to the point that we think we have perfected that colour palette, that proportion, that scarf, that collection. So yes, I mean, perfection is very, very important in that scale, on that point. But I think in the sense of nothing is ever totally finite, is it?
No.
I think I have to ask about the iconic work you do for the London Underground. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
How many years have we been doing it now? 2007 was our
I
first
think, was
year.
the overground.
Was the overground. So the fact that we are designing within the public arena is just absolutely wonderful. I think probably Emma and I, deep in our souls, it was a bit of a dream to design. I think at college people were always sort of saying about, are you designing for the top end of the market, the higher? To design for something that utilitarian was not actually a particularly fashionable thing to do. So actually the fact that we now have done various designs for TfL and Transport Fabrics is just wonderful. Something that people actually use every day, something that people actually, I would say, if they don't really notice it, then it works. They sit on those seats every single day, and actually it works. They live with it.
It doesn't jar. It
No.
doesn't sort of make them go, oh, that's awful.
You've designed the seats, haven't you? The fabric on the seats for lots of London Underground lines. I should say, unfortunately, the fabric is not made in the UK anymore.
We've done
Underground, overground, the tram,
yes.
and then we've done the Elizabeth line.
I think Emma and I take a lot of pride in the fact that we are following in that sort of the footsteps of all those incredible, Ian Marks, Marianne Dawn,
Marianne
Strab, Misha Black, and all those designers that were commissioned to design for Transport for London.
I just want to pick up just very briefly there on the point about the kind of the utilitarian design. I think you described it. I mean, these designs that you've made for London Transport, 3 to 4 million bums sat on that every day.
I know.
Yeah, fantastic.
I know. And as I say, just to reiterate, with Emma and I, we've talked about it a lot, and that sort of, how many people go in, obviously we do, but how many people go down into the tubes or the trains and actually really question what's there? And so I think that we've learnt that actually the non-questioning means that aesthetically it really works. People will always say, oh, I don't like that. They will always find things that they don't like. But when something works, and the way that they've also done the Elizabeth line, I mean, the architecture, some of those stations are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the way that they've designed it and the whole package works in a very, very utilitarian way. I mean, it just functions.
Is there a commission or a project that you kind of would like to land on your table?
Not to do with transport, to anything.
Anything.
Oh, gosh. Well, one thing I think you two, we often talked about, we'd love to do some designing for aeroplane designs. I mean, that would be fantastic.
Yes.
To work with British Replin, or what was British Replin.
I think, in the early days, we both did some projects where we almost did large-scale bits of weaving for sort of art pieces for offices and things like this. And I think that, working on a different scale, is really interesting and exciting, and that sort of monumental scale.
Going full circle, when we first worked together, that was me, and then that was Emma, and we would then
Very different styles.
Terribly. We exhibited together. Nobody knew that we were two separate sole traders, but the fact that our work sat side by side, really, really comfortably. Really, I mean, that is how we've managed to fuse together and sort of come out, we've crossed over enormously. So
when we're designing, we still say, I think this stripe, that wants to be a bit of an Emma stripe, or no, we'll do it in a bit of a Harriet way. So we, there's still things that one could identify as styles of designing. But I think, we were so lucky that it happened. I don't think either of us would have set up a business on our own. It's far too challenging.
But the fact that we happened to, things just sort of pushed us together.
Kept going, it kept going. And I think we've been really true to what
Yes.
we, as designers, believe and feel and are passionate about.
Yes.
So, I think that's been very, very important.
Final question, interestingly, picking up just what you said there. Is that perhaps what you're most proud of, staying true to what you first wanted to achieve?
Yes,
I would
think
say
so.
that and the transport fabric.
And we never sat down and said, this is what we want to do. But when we applied to the Crafts Council for our Setting Up grant, we did have to actually think through what we were trying to achieve. So I think those early days, we have stuck very, very true to how we design and how we believe.
Well, the Harriet stripe and the Emma stripe obviously sit very well together and very successfully. Thank you both for talking to me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
It feels only right that we should finish this week's show sat on a Wallace Sewell design. My thanks to Harriet and Emma for chatting to me. Thanks to you for listening. Do join us next week.